Hi everybody, welcome to the channel Moyna Bass Fishers. I'm Jim Moyna, professional bass angler from Minnesota. So hey, this video is going to be about the my final position, final day of my competition at Lake Ouachita for the 2024 Bassmaster Open Tournament there. First of all, today was the finals, in which a blast from the past. I don't fish around Arkansas much. I think this is where he's from, but he used to fish the FLW Tour many years ago, probably in the 2000s, maybe in the 212-ish, maybe 2012-ish, but haven't seen him for a long time. And I never did see him this tournament either, but I see his name at the top of the leaderboard, and his name is Jeremiah Kindy, or is it Jeremy Kindy? Jeremiah Kindy. But man, I always thought he was a nice guy back then. Probably is even more so now. And I'm happy to see him win. That's pretty cool. If I don't win, that's a good name to see at the top. So congratulations. But anyway, so normally, I usually like to take out my tackle and show you some of the tackle I was using for the tournament, but it's dark outside. It's yesterday was my final day, which was day 2. I finished 66th place. It's not at all. Oh, it's kind of. I just felt like I just had a bad feeling in my gut after this one because I was just it was just a missed opportunity totally. The first day I had all my fish halfway through the day, and I fished for a whole nother 4 hours in the afternoon and never upgraded. When my smallest fish was only a pound and a half, I couldn't upgrade that small fish. There was a lot of room to add on there. With even a 2.5 pounder would have gave me a whole nother pound. And imagine if I got a 3.5 pounder, that would have put me in the money. If I would have had another, I had a 4 pounder and a 3.5 pounder on day 1. If I would have thrown another 3.5 pounder in the live well, got rid of the 1.5, that would have made the money. And then day 2, well, heck, I didn't even weigh a limit of fish. I weighed 4 fish for 10.2. The first day was 13.8 for those 5. Day 2 was 10.2 for the 4, and I just put a 1 3/4 pounder in that bag, and I would have made the money. They paid the 45. Would have been a couple extra $1,000 in my pocket. Would have been another 20 plus points in my on my Angler of the Year point total. Blown opportunity. So I kind of left there. Kind of ended that tournament with just kind of a sick feeling, just disgusted feeling. But you got to move on, right? It's time to move on, and that's what I did today. I moved on. I drove the 6-hour trip from there. 6 hours with a couple stops. So 6 hours from there down to Lake Sam Rayburn. Got here and had a project to do immediately. And the reason why I'm here, I'll get to the project. The reason why I'm here is for the MLF Toyota Series Southwest Division tournament on Sam Rayburn, which starts this coming Wednesday. This is February 17th, 2024. So it would be this coming Wednesday. Today is a Saturday. It'll be this coming Wednesday. So back to the project. So this project is a project I've had to do a handful of times over the years, and it's finally this project had to be just done from the ground up. And that was this camper door behind me, which I'm really not happy with the original construction of it to begin with. It was kind of weak. They built this camper. It's a 1994 camper, so it's still going. I've had to rework a few things, and as you know, I've had water leaks, and one problem where the water seems to collect is in this door. And the water runs to the bottom of the door, and it basically rotted out the wood down there. And so I was having troubles, and I've patched it at Okeechobee just 2 weeks ago. I was having troubles. I took part of it apart, just put in a couple extra screws, redid a couple screws, repatched things together. And I was just babying that door, just waiting for the moment to. I was hoping to do it after this Rayburn tournament where I could maybe sit down and break it all down and reframe the thing. But the reframing had to be done today because yesterday, when I shut the door last night, I mean, the last couple of days had really been starting to fall apart again. And when I shut the door last night, I had a hard time, pulled it shut, and the bottom basically fell out when I shut it. So to open it this morning, I really had to just practically bust it open because that bottom kind of fell out, which then makes a catch on a lip on the bottom. And I really had to freaking give it a good push to open, to escape this shell of a camper this morning. So, and then, when I left from Treasure Isle RV Park where I was staying, I basically had to tape the door together to get it from there to here. And I knew when I got here, well, I didn't know, but if he was available, the guy that operates the place, Ed Polda, I mean, as long as he had time, I felt like he could maybe assist me. If he couldn't, then I was going to just do the project on my own. But Ed was, I mean, he's such a great help to fishermen here because he understands. He fishes tournaments himself, so he understands when a guy needs when a fisherman needs a little help from somebody, which I did, and Ed. He helped me fix this door under his direction, using all his tools, and between him and I, we got the project done. It took a few hours. Actually, it took longer than we both expected because we took it apart, reframed it, put it back together, then realized that, hey, the problem I was having is probably going to come up again, even though we had fresh wood in there. But these panels that help hold it together it was not tight. So we took the door all apart again, and there's several parts of this door. This camper was made to be lightweight, so they made a lightweight door. So anyhow, we ended up putting some cross beams in there, so it would help firm things up, pull things together, and it did. But it took a long time to do all this, to cut the wood, fabricate the wood, to reassemble everything, because there's multiple pieces to this door, and they're hard to get to fit together. And it's tricky. It's kind of a tricky project, and going into it, never done this before. Well, I've patched this thing together before in the past, but to rebuild it completely, and to get these pieces to fit together, and so thanks Ed for helping me out. So anyways, back to the tournament. I had to shout out to Ed on that. Back to the tournament in Ouachita. How did I catch my fish? And my thoughts, well, it really was a scrap. I really had to scrap this thing together. In one way, I'm discussing how I was just a fish short, but on the other hand, on the plus side is I was looking at a total catastrophe for this tournament. With a half hour left on day 2 yesterday, I had 3 fish, and that's all I had. Well, I caught a 4-pounder with not even 30 minutes to fish, probably with 20 minutes to fish. I caught a 4-pounder. So, and the importance of the extra 4 pounds in Angler of the Year points is it probably made the difference in at least 50, 60 points. So that, instead of fishing 66th place, I for sure would have finished in the hundreds, which you cannot do if you want to finish in the top 9 positions in the Angler of the Year points, which is where I want to finish which is where I got to be at the end of this series of tournaments, which concludes in October. I got to be there if I want to qualify, and this is my goal, to fish in the Bassmaster Elites in 2025. That's what a bunch of our goal is. That's why we're in this trail. And after these first two tournaments, with just two mediocre finishes, with the last one bordering on somewhat poor. I'm in 31. I'm in 31st place out of I think there's 150, 160 people that have entered all 9 tournaments. We do get in Okeechobee. I think we had a 225 boat field, but a lot of those guys are just fishing that one tournament, or maybe they're fishing 3 or 4 of these Bassmaster Opens. They're not fishing all of them, but there are about 150, 160 of us that are fishing all of them. So those are the people that those are the guys I have to beat in the Angler of the Year points. So out of those guys, I'm 31 out of the 150, 160. So that ain't so bad, but it's not where I need to be. We got 7 more tournaments from now until October. So there's a lot of fish to be caught, a lot of points to be managed. But I'll tell you this, this 66th position in this last one, I got to balance it out with like a top 10 or a couple of top 20. I mean, a guy has to cash in on some top 10s and some top 20s if he's going to make it in the top 9 by the end of the year. So I'm still waiting for those finishes to come. It's, you never know. I've had a problem getting top 10s the last few years. So that's, other than the Champions Tour back home where I'm competing against only 60 guys, I can manage top 10s. And that's back home. On these national tournaments, over the last, I did finish 3rd in Angler of the Year points in the Toyota Series Southwest Division a couple years ago. So, it's not like I'm foreign to, it's not like, finishing high in Angler of the Year points is foreign to me. I have done it in the past more than once. So, it's doable. But I am behind a little bit now. So, here we go. Got to catch up. Now, as far as how I caught my fish, I still haven't gotten to that. As far as how I caught my fish, one at a time. No, sorry. I went after my 4.5 days of practice. I really had a mishmash of ideas in my head, and it came down to this. I felt like the bite on the clear end of the lake was strong under low light, meaning early morning or cloud cover. And then I wanted to progress. Then I wanted to move to the dirtier, dingier water, which is up the river's arms, later in the day when the sun was out. So that was the premise of, that was my overall plan, okay? So to catch them out of the deep clear end, I was using my active target, fishing anywhere from the bank out to like 30 feet. And out in the 30 feet, I'd find brush piles. From about 20 shallower, there would be the hydrilla. So, and it was harder to pick the fish out of the hydrilla, but sometimes they'd be swimming over it, or sometimes in the loose, sparse stuff, you could see one swimming through there. But then there's always the confusion of the mystery fish that are swimming, whether they're carp or whether they're drum. I know I threw out some drum in practice and caught them, hoping they were bass. Then there's the white bass factor, catfish factor. It's hard to tell what you're looking at sometimes. I got a good feel for the drum, and the carp, but still, there was still plenty of fish that were in the bass size range on my Lowrance screen that you throw out there and they would do nothing. They would have no reaction to your lure. In which case, I'm assuming those had to be catfish or maybe sometimes white bass. But white bass tend to be on the move really fast. when you get around white bass or stripers, they don't stay put. They're swimming, they're moving, they're hunting as a pack actively. It seems like so much of the time. Or you can run into a school of big gizzard shad, but usually they're big numbers and they're tight. They're a little bit tighterly schooled, tighterly packed on your screen as compared to largemouth that might be roaming a wolf pack. But anyhow, that's how I started the morning, using swim baits and jerk baits primarily. Those are my primary weapons. The swim bait I would use like a 3 to 4 inch swim bait on a all-terrain smallish smasher jig head. So on the first day, and then the second day, I would go into dirtier water where I would, my primary bait was throwing a hard jerk bait, and secondary options were like a spinnerbait, crankbait, and an all-terrain jig. Okay, so the way it happened the first day, I caught 2 spotted bass pretty quick off of the deep clear end of the lake, but the bite quickly died, and I kind of lingered around and fought it for a while, and finally pulled ship at about 10 o'clock and ran to the darker water, pulled up to the first spot, second cast, 3-pounder on a jerkbait. so now I'm like, all right, that's my third one. I'm gonna have second cast. I got a 3-pounder. This is about to go down heavy. I mean, I was already holding up that trophy, first place trophy, right then and there in my head. But I had to frickin' just start covering water and cast it, and I put that jerkbait in my hand and just started covering water. And it was probably about an hour later where I finally caught another one, but it was a 3.5-pounder. All right, so now I'm like, okay, if I can pop a 3 to 3.5-pounder every hour, I still had like 4 or 5 hours left, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have a really good catch by the end. If I can, keep this pace up. Well, it took like nearly another hour before I caught another keeper, which was number 5. And you know what? It wasn't on the jerkbait. I came across this log up on the bank, and it was barely any of this log was even the water, but I threw the all-terrain AT jig up there with a Billy Rub Billy Rub flutter craw as my trailer on that jig. I love that flutter craw. Of course, love the all-terrain jig. And first flip up to this tree and felt the bites at the hook, and it was a 4-pounder. My gosh, there was one of my good kickers. So now I had a 4-pounder, 3.5-pounder, 3-pounder, 2-pounder, 1.5-pounder. Fished the whole rest of the day. I caught the whole rest of the day. I lost like another 1.5 pound spotted bass right at the boat. If it was an upgrade, it was like probably an ounce. It could have been smaller. I don't know. It was right in the same size class. And then I caught like a keeper largemouth that was smaller than that 1.5 pound spotted bass. And that's all I did the whole rest of the day. I was flipping logs like crazy with that jig. I was throwing that jerkbait like mad everywhere. And blanks. All blanks. I don't know what happened to my bite, but I was doing satisfactory on that jerkbait in practice in the afternoon. So I don't know what happened on sunny afternoons. And we had a sunny afternoon. And I don't know what happened. I don't know. Fish just got off it. So whatever. It's just one of those things. My lack of understanding, I guess, fishing that. And I wasn't active targeting these fish. I was just covering water, chunking. And if I'm going to take the time to sit there and study my electronics while I'm trying to cover water, cover shallow water and chunk and work my bait, no, I kind of shut my mind off on the active target. But anyways, so now day 2 comes, and and it's going to be a cloudy day with a front coming through late in the day. So now I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to play the clouds as long as because I'm worried about getting enough bites, right? I'm worried about getting enough bites and I'm thinking, well, I'm thinking if it's going to be cloudy, that means that clear under the lake, that bite's going to prolong, and I'm going to be able to play that out, and probably, I felt like that's my best shot for a limit. And I didn't know what the jerkbait bite was going to do in the dirtier part of the lake with the cloud cover. So I'm like, you know what? My best, safest play to throw some numbers of fish in the boat was to fish the lower end in the clear water. So that's what I did. So that's how I started it, same way I started the first day. I got out there, and I went to the exact same spot I started on the day before. Apparently, I didn't really replenish much because I think I saw one fish swimming around that looked like a bass. Didn't catch it. So then we went to area number 2, and I think on my first or second cast, first or second cast of my co-angler, who was a great Gary Haraguchi, great guy to fish with. He's a super courteous guy. Never was trying to throw ahead of the boat, or even if we got to where you could cast to either bank, he refrained from throwing to the bank I haven't casted to yet. He'd let me go to the back of the cove, turn around, and throw at that bank. So thank you, Gary, for being very curious. And so he caught a 4-pounder. He caught a 4-pounder on a Nico rig, which I love to throw Nico rigs, but I hadn't had much luck with it. So I didn't pick mine up. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just keep throwing my jerkbait. I'm going to keep throwing these swim baits, because if he catches a second one, then I might have to consider that Nico rig. But that was his only fish all day. In a tournament, in places where I was fishing, apparently there wasn't that many fish. But I did catch 2 fish in the morning period. I caught one not too long after Gary caught his 4-pounder. I caught like a 2-pounder off of a deep diving jerkbait, because I wanted it to get down to the deeper part of the grass. And this one I didn't see the fish. I did not see the fish on the active target, because the grass was kind of heavy right there, but I could see my jerkbait popping over that grass, and then it was probably about 3 feet over the grass. And then I saw out of the grass rise a mark on the screen, so I knew that was a bass coming out of the grass, and I had to work the bait like another 15 feet before he finally bit it. Which makes you wonder, how many times over the years have you worked a bait quite a ways and before the fish finally hits that jerkbait? I know with smallmouth fishing, a lot of times they'd follow it all the way to the boat before I could get him to bite it. So it does happen a lot. Anyways, so we kept fishing that area, and I'd start covering some water, trying other little points in the area, this and that. And a lot of points were kind of the big key. Although that 4-pound largemouth from day one was farther back in a creek on a channel swing. Anyways, back to day 2. Back to covering water in the morning with the jerkbait. I could not catch another fish on that jerkbait. I could not have another fish rise to it. I couldn't find them chasing it until we came to this one point. It was a point where I saw, from a distance, I saw some fish blast on it. And I pointed out to Gary, and look, there's some fish marking that point. So we finally got there, and couldn't see him on the active target because there's a lot of grass there, so they might have been blending in with the grass, the hydrilla. But then, as we worked around, and finally they poked their heads out of the grass, and I threw a little tiny swim bait over there, caught the fish, or caught a fish. It ended up being like about 1.5 pounds. Barely, probably sub 1.5 pounds, probably like a 1.5 or a 1.6. But it was a keeper. It was over 13. It was like 13 and a quarter, 13 and a half, kind of a slender largemouth. So now I had 2, but then we worked, and he threw his Nico rig, and I threw the jerk bait and the swim baits, and it got to be 11 o'clock. And we still had the cloud cover, and I'm like, why aren't these fish responding to anything? And finally, I'm like, you know what? Let's just scrap this. Let's run up the lake. So we ran up the lake, and first point I pull up to, I see a fish sitting on a brush pile, sitting at the top of a brush pile. Throw over there with the deep jive and jerk bait. The fish follows it maybe 7-8 feet before he hits it. I get him in the boat. It's a 3-pounder. So now I'm like, okay, I got my check-ins at 3:35. It's now a little bit after 11. If I could if I catch 2 more, that's my limit. And then if I catch, a couple more, I'll be able to upgrade that 13 1/4 incher out and be in check range. Oh man, I've worked them jerk baits up there. So, I mean, I worked them. I covered water. I worked them. I went and fished the channel swing where I caught the 4-pounder. Nothing happened there. I fished the bank where I caught the 3.5-pounder from the day before. Nothing there. I fished the pocket that I mentioned in one of my practice videos where there was shad in there, and there was a school of largemouths in there working the shad, and white bass were in there. And it was just a party going down, but that party was long over with. There was nothing in that pocket. I tried this, I tried that. Then I went back. I'm down to like 30 minutes to go, 25 minutes to go. And I go back to, I go to the spot, which I already tried already. But I decided to go back to it because on the active target, I noticed up shallow. I even said to Gary, I said, God, I swear there was something going on there up shallow, because I saw a couple look like bass swim out from shallow out to deep. After I already passed the point, I happened to swing the active target and look back there, because that's right where I caught my 3-pounder the day before, right away. When I first started jerk baiting on day 1, I caught a 3-pounder right there, and I swung. I'm like, God, there's 2 bassy looking fish back there. And but we continued on our way, and now I came back with 25 minutes. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try to catch one of those 2 fish I saw right where I caught the 3-pounder the day before. And once you know it, I caught my 4-pounder with 25 minutes left to go. Fish number 4. It's a 4-pounder. Saved the freaking tournament from being a disaster, from being a 100th place finish or worse. I caught him with 25 minutes to go. So then a short distance from there was a point where I caught a keeper in practice, and there was always fish activity on this point on the active target. And I actually had some fish follow my baits out. So I get to that point, throw up there, hook up a fish, and I'm like just jacked. I'm like, yes, I got one hooked. I got him hooked. And I get him in the boat, and his minimum length in this tournament was 13 inches. He was like 12 and a half, 12 and 3/4. What a letdown. But I'm feeling like, hey, the fish are turning on. And so we fished that little point. Then I'd fire up my Merc, race my Merc Ranger about 2 miles away to another cove that I hadn't hit yet. But I caught like a 3-pounder there in practice. So I go in there, work it, and I get towards the back of a pocket, and we'd already worked the stretch where I caught the 3-pounder, but now I'm like 40 yards past it, and I throw my shallow running jerkbait out there. By the way, that 4-pounder was on a shallow running jerkbait. Throw my shallow running jerkbait out there, and as soon as it lands up near the bank, about 5-6 feet away, there's a swirl, and I'm like, what is going on? That's really weird, because that doesn't happen normally, unless if the water is really warm. But here our water temperatures are in the low 50s. So it lands, there's a swirl, and I'm just like, what's going to happen here? And I jerk my jerkbait a couple times, and then I feel the fish crush it. Pull back on the rod, take about 7-8 cranks on the reel, rod bends over, rod unbends. Fish, it comes off. That was with 5 minutes left before I had to run back. Oh, that was the money fish too. If it was 1.75 pounds or bigger, that was money fish, 20 plus more points. What a huge letdown for that fish to not get hooked up. That would have been just the ultimate last second heroics, catching that 4 pounder and then that one to freaking climb into the money. But not to be. But hey, thanks for watching. 66th place, 31 in the end of the year points. I'm at Sam Rayburn now. My first day of practice tomorrow. I got tomorrow, which is Sunday. I got Monday, and I got Tuesday until like 4 o'clock. I think I'll have to double check that on the printout that they have for the tournament. The tournament, whatever they call it. They gave you a briefing. So. And then the MLF Southwestern Division Toyota Series tournament starts on Wednesday. So that's where I'm at. I get to go fishing on Rayburn where they got 10-pounder. Well, Ouachita had 10. Ouachita has some just really big bass women in there. I mean, of course, not all of them, but just look at what the big bass was for that tournament. I think it was like 11 pounds. Day one, it was like 10 pounds. So anyhow, those are out here in this lake. I caught 11 pounder a couple years ago. I also caught a couple like 8s. Let's go find some tomorrow, but save them for Wednesday. Over.